and I rise to move my motion 654, which is a motion around loneliness. It's a motion about an issue that quite often we know it, we sometimes feel it, but we don't understand it, and we're only just starting to understand the true impact of loneliness on our society. It's been called an epidemic in other areas, and it's why I'm calling today for the Victorian government to take on this issue, to take it on at the level it needs to be taken on, and that is as a portfolio in this government. It is a killer. It is a killer, and it costs us millions and millions of dollars. If we could start addressing this, and we know the evidence that it kills people, that it costs us millions and millions of dollars, particularly in our health system, but also in our justice system. By addressing it, and I think this carries on from some of the conversations we were having in Ms Maxwell's motion, if we can look at early intervention, if we can look at prevention, if we can look at treating this will relieve the burden on our health system, a health system that is heavily weighed down at the moment. So this motion, while it's relatively simple in its ask, it actually can be profound. It could be profound. It's something that's already happened in the UK and in Japan, and it's something now that the World Health Organization will be recommending to all governments across the world. They've come out with this now, and they will be developing more information about this. So I think now is the right time. Now is the right time for Victoria to do this. Loneliness is killing us. Lonely Australians have a significantly worse health status than Australians who do not experience loneliness. According to the 2018 Australian Loneliness Report, 1 in 4 Australians are lonely. 1 in 4 Australians. Now, this is not social isolation. Loneliness can affect people. They can be married. They can be surrounded by people. But that sense of loneliness is profound. It's stigmatising. It's something that people can't talk about. And I think particularly for young people, when they are looking at the curated best lives of their friends and people in their age group, in their social media channels, and they're seeing these wonderful, beautiful lives, and that's not their life. And their desire for social interaction is just not being met. And then that creates a vicious circle, because they're anxious about seeking that social interaction. And then when they are trying to socially interact, they become anxious, and then that makes it worse. And so we know that loneliness is a significant precursor to a lot of mental health issues, particularly anxiety and depression. In 2019, the Young Australians Loneliness Survey found that more than half of young Australians felt lonely sometimes or always. And I think this is really important, because I think, when I first started looking at loneliness, probably in 2016, as an issue, and I was seeing this emerge in the UK, and I was seeing the talk happening over there, you kind of I imagined it was someone like my dad. When my mum died, he had no tour director for his life, and he didn't quite know how to get out there and make a life. And but it's not just that older person whose significant other has left them or has passed away. It's not just that person. It can be a person who's married. It can be a person surrounded by people, as I mentioned. Loneliness has emerged as one of the most serious health challenges being faced around the world. Research finds that loneliness is a better predictor of premature death than physical inactivity, obesity, or smoking 15 cigarettes a day. it is a better predictor of premature death. You know, I find that smoking statistic kind of incredibly significant and incredibly important, because you think what we do to stop people smoking, and the work and the public awareness campaigns, the packaging, the funds invested into quit campaigns. And yet, in contrast, here we have a health problem of similar gravity, and that it's just slid under the radar until now. This motion comes, as I mentioned, where other developed nations around the world legislate dedicated resources to address the rates of loneliness. As I mentioned, in 2018, Britain announced the world's first Minister for Loneliness through the appointment of Tracey Crouch. And more recently, in 2020, Japan appointed Tetsushi Sakamoto into the same role. And Japan did this because they could see the mental health impact of loneliness. They could see what it was doing. They actually linked their increase in suicide rates to loneliness, and that was what the research told them. I think in Victoria, if we had a portfolio such as this, it would work to ensure that adequate resources and funding effectively addresses loneliness here. And I think this is particularly relevant right now where we are in the pandemic. If we look at the UK, where the most work has been done in this area, they estimated that the total cost of loneliness to their health and justice systems was £32 billion a year. 32 billion. So imagine just putting in some resources, the payback that you can get there. And that is what predicated the United Kingdom's government, and I note at that time it was a Conservative government, to appoint a dedicated Minister for Loneliness. And in fact, they published the world's first loneliness strategy. By 2020, their first loneliness annual report outlined significant progress as a result of the over 60 commitments they made to establishing a ministry. We can and we should do the same here. And I want to acknowledge Dr. Michelle Lim and congratulate her on the extraordinary work she's been doing in the Ending Loneliness Together campaign. And this is coming out of Monash University. And she is, she's a world leader in this area. You see her, when you're looking at different research documents, you see her name in most of them. The Ending Loneliness white paper it's compelling reading, it's factual, and it covers everything. It traverses the stigma and loneliness in its various contexts. And I would really implore anyone listening today to look up the Ending Loneliness white paper. Globally, the World Health Organization has already published relatively extensively on this issue, particularly in respect to social isolation and loneliness in older people. But they're currently broadening that work and they're looking at the wider population. You know, we know, and the evidence that has come out of the UK is that lonely people attend doctors more regularly. They don't go there for health. They go there because they're experiencing loneliness. And I know it's not right to kind of bring the personal in, but I will, because I think of my father, and his diary was filled with doctor's appointments and health appointments. You know, he went to the dietitian I don't know how many times. I mean, he never lost a pound out of it. He never followed any of the instructions he was given by that dietitian or the podiatrist or whoever he went to. But he had a diary full of health appointments. And I'm not sure that he necessarily needed them. But he needed that context. And this is why it costs us so much. We were hearing from a group called Valid, who represents people with an intellectual disability. And they were telling us that some of their members would feel this sense of loneliness to such an extent that they would call an ambulance in the middle of the night, because that was all they could do. It was the only way they could think of fixing this, of saving their own lives. So who has confirmed that social isolation and loneliness impose a heavy financial burden on society? And they have declared 2021 to 2030 that policy window to address this issue, identifying increasing the political priority of the issue as the first of its three-point strategies. And Dr. Etienne Krug, the Director of the World Health Organisation's Department of Social Determinants of Health, says social isolation and loneliness have recently moved up the public policy and public health agenda in several countries. Now, WHO calls all governments to give social isolation and loneliness the political priority and resources that they deserve to ensure all people benefit from a shared spirit of friendship and solidarity. And I'd have to say, if there was ever a day to be talking about this, if there was ever a time to be talking about social cohesion and bringing our community back and extending friendship and solidarity, well, right now it is. I'd also just like to quickly, in finishing, I'd like to advocate or to also recognise Benjamin McDonald, who was an intern in my office, who prepared a really compelling intern report on this issue. And he made some recommendations in that from the work that he had done, and that includes social prescribing. So this is about looking at when people attend to see their health practitioners, that they can prescribe social activities, that they can prescribe something other than medicine. And we know that, we're seeing so many people experiencing loneliness being given Valium because of their perceived anxiety, when in actual fact that's not what they needed. What they needed was connection. What they needed was assistance to connect. What they needed was a stigma-free way to do that. And there are already organisations in our community, we know them, neighbourhood houses, the men's sheds. And I think one of my favourite, which is a group called the Kindred Clubhouse, which is for people with mental health issues, and that they have this sort of clubhouse, drop-in style of approach, and it's beautiful. And it's run by its members, and I know that, in fact, they have been funded federally and by the state here in Victoria, and it's something that came out of New York decades ago. In Poland, they're setting up little chairs where people can sit saying, happy to have a chat, would love to have a chat. And these are small things that we can do, but I think these are really important things that we need to do to improve the social cohesion of our community. And I think this is just such a significant issue, and it has been made more urgent around the world by COVID. Around the world. This is not just something that's happening in Victoria, this is happening around the world, and that's why I think we should address it now. Thank you.